Thank you so much for having me here today. There's three things I'd like to cover today. One, that the number of seniors living in poverty across the country and in California is high, unacceptably high and rising. That the rise is the result of a perfect storm of a number of factors, and that there are things that the state can do to provide relief to the seniors in our communities that truly need it. So thank you for having me here today. I'm Kevin Prindeville. I'm the Executive Director of Justice and Aging, formerly the National Senior Citizens Law Center. We just changed our name a couple weeks ago. I hope that you're either aware of, or for the newer members will become aware of, the work that our organization does on issues like Medicare, Medi-Cal, IHSS, Social Security, SSI, both in our offices here in California and Oakland and Los Angeles, as well as across the country from our offices in Washington, D.C. And I'm really excited to be here to talk about the context in which we do our work, which is this bigger problem that we're trying to solve and address, which is the poverty that too many older adults in our country and our state live in today. Now, I normally start talks with policymakers about senior poverty with pictures of the clients that we serve and stories of their lives, but we're really honored to have here today Ms. Mills as well as Sandy to speak with us, and so that you can hear from them directly. We were the organization that worked with four women, including the two of them and Rochelle, to put together a video about the stories of their lives. And it looked like Robert was trying to find a way that maybe it could even be watched here today. But I do also commend you to watch that video. It's the four of them talking in their own words about what their lives are like. It's very powerful. And I'm just humbled that they continue to share their story and show that bravery, as Rochelle mentioned. So their stories are the stories of millions of older adults in California and across the country that are you rely on Medicare, Medi-Cal, Social Security, SSI, all of the programs that exist today to support seniors. And they're finding that because of cuts to these programs, because of modifications, because of failures to keep these programs updated, they're not going as far as they used to. And the result is that access to quality food, affordable housing, health, and long-term services and supports is getting more and more difficult for seniors. And the data bears this out. So you don't see a lot of discussion of the data about seniors and senior poverty. But when you look at it, it's pretty striking. The official poverty measure, which is a very conservative way to measure poverty, across the country defines 10% of, or roughly 10% of seniors living in poverty. If you look at the supplemental poverty measure, which is a better reflection of what seniors' true costs are, it rises to 15% of seniors across the country living in poverty. If you use the definition economically vulnerable, which is twice the federal poverty level, you see that about half of our country's seniors are struggling to get by. Now, for some people, those percentages don't mean much. They might say, well, 9%, 15%, you're always going to have some poverty, so, what can we do? And we like to remind those folks that 15% is 6.3 million parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, neighbors, spouses, friends, loved ones living in this country in poverty as they age. And to us, that's just an unacceptable number. The look at California is even more disheartening. In California, it's fully 1 in 5 seniors living in poverty, again, under a pretty conservative measure of poverty still, the supplemental poverty measure. That's the second highest in the country. Only Washington, D.C., where 1 in 4 seniors lives in poverty, is worse than California. Now, the official poverty measures we've learned, thanks to the great work of the Insight Center and their partners on the Elder Economic Security Index, we've learned that the poverty rate doesn't really give us a good picture. And luckily in California, we have the Elder Economic Security Index, which gives us a fuller picture. And it shows that for a single renter in California, it costs about $23,000 a year to get by. The supplemental poverty measure tells us that poverty means $14,000 a year. The federal poverty measure tells us poverty means $10,000 a year. So, if we look at what it really costs to get by in California, we've got large numbers of seniors struggling to make ends meet. We can look at it, luckily they have numbers on every city and county across the state, and it's a similar number just about everywhere you go. Now, older women and people of color are particularly impacted by poverty. This slide's a little bit difficult to read, but women are about twice as likely to be poor when they're old. And then if you look at the red bars in the graph on the right, Native American women, black women, Hispanic women, as they're older, they are extremely likely to be living in poverty. These are stats using that most conservative measure, the official poverty measure, and under that measure, 1 in 5 older African American and Hispanic older women are in poverty. So if you were to adjust that for the supplemental measure or the SE, then the numbers would really skyrocket. LGBT older adults are also a group that's extremely vulnerable. They've got high poverty rates. They faced, especially if you think of this generation of older adults that are LGBT, they faced a lifetime of employment discrimination, housing discrimination. They had no access to marriage and the economic benefits that marriage brings. They had higher rates of uninsured healthcare status. They had less family support because when they came out, they were likely not supported by family members. And then if you look at the transgender older adult population, even more at risk and more likely to be living in poverty as they age. So unfortunately, the story doesn't get much better. The projections all say that senior poverty is going to continue to rise. Extreme poverty has been rising among just about every category you look at. Extreme poverty means seniors living at under 50% of the federal poverty level. So men, women living alone, they're all up. Food insecurity is projected to rise by 50% by 2050, the end of the aging of the baby boom. The homeless numbers nationally are projected to rise 33% by 2020 and by 100% by 2050. We're going to see a doubling in the homeless population of older adults. And in Los Angeles County, homelessness has risen by 30% just in that 2-year period, 2011 to 2013. So just in a couple years, we saw the number of older folks living on the streets rise by 30% in LA. So why is this happening? It's a bit of a perfect storm. You have the boomers aging, right? So you've probably heard the numbers. I know I've heard Chairwoman Brown talk about the 10,000 people that turn 65 every day, and that's going to happen for the next 17 years. So as more people are aging, we're going to have more poor seniors. The economy has changed dramatically over the last several decades. Wages have stagnated. Pensions have gone away. It's become harder to save money while you're working. All of these things that we talk about having an impact on families and working adults, those just will get multiplied as they age and face their retirement years. The recent economic recession hit older adults particularly hard, especially the group that's about to become older adults. People that were 50 to 64 lost equity in their home. They were the most likely to get laid off and the least likely to find a new job. If they had a 401k, they probably drew down the value. If they didn't draw down the value, the stock market took it out for them. So the recession hit them hard. And then rising costs. Long-term care costs in the state and the country are rising. Healthcare costs are rising. Just as people have less money than ever, they're getting hit with some of the highest costs in their lives, and they're not able to prepare for those costs while they're working because they've got to pay high college tuition for their children, and they've got to, to keep up with rising home prices and et cetera. And then finally, the safety net is shrinking. In California, we had cuts to the Medi-Cal program, the IHSS program, the SSP, the California the Older Californians funds at the federal level, cuts to the Older Americans Act, a proposal today from the House to cut Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security benefits. So all of these things are leading to more economic vulnerability for our seniors. And the clearest and best example is the SSI SSP benefit right here in California. In 2009, the value of the benefit was $907 a month. That represented about 100% of the federal poverty level. Today, the value of the benefit 6 years later has gone down to only $881 a month, and we now have seniors and people with disabilities trapped at an income of 90% of federal poverty level. We've told them, you are going to live in poverty. So what do? We do what works. What we found is that the way to bring seniors out of poverty is to use the social safety nets. Government programs like Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and SSI have worked to bring seniors out of poverty. Without those programs today, many more seniors would be living in poverty. In 1960, before most of those programs existed, the poverty rate of seniors was 35%. But if we don't do something now, we're going to end up in those ranges again. We have to reject any new proposals to cut programs, and then we have to restore and update programs. We're calling for a complete restoration of the SSP back to 100% of the federal poverty level, and a restoration of the COLA that was frozen. In addition to the income support that doing that would provide, we also need to ensure that our poor seniors in California have access to health care and long-term services and supports. They have affordable and safe housing options. They have the full array of supportive services that the Older Americans Act and Older Californians Act provide, and that they have access to fresh, healthy food. And most of all, they need you. As we talked about in the past panel, they need you to listen to their stories. They need you to understand their challenges, and they need all of us in this room to come together to take action to improve their lives and ensure that they can age with dignity and independence, just like all of us want to. So thank you.
Thank you very much. One question.
Yes.
You said that you want to restore back to what it was in 2008 or something?
We want to bring the benefit level up to 100% of federal poverty again.
So they'll still be in poverty?
That's right.
I just thought I would point that out. They'll still be in poverty.
That's right. That's right.
Are there any questions, or would you like to hear the other? Okay, go ahead.
Did I hear right? It's going to be more cuts for the seniors this year? It's a proposal?
Yes, there was a budget framework passed today in the Congress, in the House of Representatives, that would include block granting Medicaid, the food stamp program, making changes to Medicare that would shift costs to beneficiaries, would introduce more costs. Now, that's just a proposal, but the talk of continuing to cut this population that's already hanging by a thread continues.
How we can help?
By talking with your constituents, by hearing their stories, by sharing those stories, and being a voice for the population. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. I also wanted to say I don't agree with all this making a percentage of what level of poverty you are. It's like you either have or you don't. And I've never understood why we make so much of a big deal about what percentage of poverty that you're in. If you're in poverty, it don't matter the percentage, you're in poverty, right? Yeah. And I know that's not an issue to take with you, but I guess I'm asking because as you showed us this historical lens of the percentage of seniors who live in poverty and how it's changed, I guess I'm wondering if there's been any movement to change the percentages of poverty level, because this is an important group to us. Everybody talks about seniors being important to us, right? Politicians especially, but if they're so important, why aren't we doing this work? And is there a movement to change poverty levels? If nothing, I can't think of another group that it might be more compelling to lead with in the efforts to change how we think and talk about poverty levels. Has there been any such effort? Is there anything brewing? And what can you share with us?
Yeah, fortunately there is. I'm hoping my colleague who's really been helping to lead the effort across the state will say more. But the Elder Economic Security Index really gives us a framework that tells us exactly what it takes to get by and allows us to see if you have less than that, you're not getting by, and that we could really use that as a model for determining assistance that we provide through programs in the state to make sure that people have enough.
I'll be patient. I won't steal her thunder. Yeah. I'll wait for the presentation. But would you just say how much the impact to the general fund would be if we did what we're supposed to do to restore the COLA and to provide proper funding? You said 100% of the poverty level for SSP, SSP and SSI? SSP, you were saying.
Yeah,
what's the dollar amount?
I don't have that information. I think some of the panelists later today will.
Very good.
I apologize.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Next, because I know that you have to leave soon. We have Ms. Sandoval, who will come to us about elder economic insecurity.
Is this on? Yes, okay. Mm-hmm. Good afternoon, Madam and Mr. Chairs and other distinguished members of the Committee on Aging and Long-Term Care and Human Services, staff, and members of the audience. My name is Gabriela Sandoval. I'm Director of Research and Chief Economic Security Officer with the Insight Center for Community Economic Development. The Insight Center is located in Oakland. We're a national, oh, this isn't working. Sorry. You can do it for me? All right. Thank you, Kevin. So we're a national research consulting and legal organization dedicated to building economic health and opportunity in vulnerable communities in California and throughout the country. And as you can see from the slide, we focus on all aspects of the life cycle as well as intergenerationally. And this is a very critical moment in the life cycle because, as Kevin said and several of you have noted, we'd all like to retire with dignity and resources. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today about the economic realities of seniors in California. As you know, we're experiencing demographic changes that are occurring at the kind of confluence of what many call the graying and browning of California. The number of people aged 65 and older in the U.S. is expected to double in the next 30 years. I won't go through all the numbers again, but I will say that if 1 in 5 older adults today is it 1 in 5? 1 in 5 older adults today is living in poverty. We also know that our elders of color are about 3 times as likely to be living in poverty than their white counterparts. So to understand the economic security challenges facing this growing population, the Insight Center partners with the UCLA Center for Health Policy Research to provide regular updates to the Elder Economic Security Index for different household formations. And so you can see here the breakdown, and Kevin showed you a slide that I will show you again actually in a second, but this actually has the breakdown. The Elder Index is a basic needs budget of what, kind of what, it's actually modest. It includes rent, food, healthcare, transportation, and some miscellaneous costs. So you can see the breakdown up there by month as well as by year. And it's a more accurate measurement of the cost of living than the federal poverty guidelines because it reflects variation by county and type of housing. In 2011, the California legislature enacted and Governor Brown signed into law Assembly Bill 138, the Elder Economic Planning Act, which assists area agencies on aging and planning to meet the needs of seniors using the Elder Index. So there is precedent for using this alternative metric to the federal poverty guidelines. Let me show you that. Oh, wait, can you go back? Oh, I'm missing a slide. Can you? Let me actually. Sorry. Can you? Can you go forward, Mark? Okay. Sorry. This. Oh, that's yeah. Sorry about that. Technical difficulties. So. This is basically the same slide that Kevin showed you earlier, so I'm not, going to, actually, sorry, go forward one more for me. This is a slide. No, sorry, go back. Actually, what this is the specific Elder Index for Ventura County. And let me say that the reason I chose Ventura County, Kevin, do you mind going back one more? These are my parents. I want to introduce you to my parents. These are Alfredo and Carmen Sandoval. They are Mexican immigrants who moved with their 3 adolescent daughters from Chihuahua in the northern part of Mexico to a small Southern California city in Ventura County, Santa Paula. I don't know if any of you know where that is. But they moved there in the early 1970s. So I was born a couple of years after they arrived there. And so I'm really happy that we have the case profiles today, but I also wanted you to go ahead and see kind of some of the context within which I'm working here. If you can go to the next slide. So they live in Ventura County currently, and this is the actual the Elder Index costs for Ventura County. As you can see, for a couple with a mortgage, so a couple like my parents with a mortgage, that's $41,288 a year. The contrast here is that the median Social Security payment in 2011 was $20,488, and the maximum supplemental security payment was for 2011 was just under $17,000. Okay, so in an effort to prepare for this presentation, I actually called my mom and talked to her a little bit about her budget, which I hadn't actually ever spoken with her about specifically. But you can see here that in contrast to that actual basic needs budget, my parents make about $17,000 a year. And this is all Social Security and SSI. It's slightly more than the federal poverty guidelines. So again, you know, I think my parents are actually really fortunate. But I will say that about 2.5 weeks ago, there was a hit and run in my parents' front yard, and it sheared a gas main. And this actually, my mom hadn't even told me about this until I called her to talk to her about this. And she said to me, you know, there was this accident on our front lawn, and because of the accident, Southern California gas company came in and told us that we have to move our water heater. So she had to go to the city and get a permit for $110 to get permission to move the water heater. And then they told her that the water heater was too old and needed to be replaced. So that water heater was 36 years old. I was a toddler when they purchased it. So she and my father had to pay another $500 for a new water heater. And then they had to pay for materials to install the heater and for repairs on their property because of this hit and run accident. And their homeowner's insurance is refusing to pay for any of this right now. And this doesn't include the cost of labor. So I said to her, you know, in a little bit of alarm, Mom, can I pay for it? And she very proudly said, no, we can do it ourselves. And they would rather actually exhaust what very basic savings they have than allow one of their 4 daughters to help them with these expenses. But it really highlights this question of, you know, kind of income security versus asset security, because we all experience unexpected situations in our lives, and not everyone, just because we have income security doesn't mean that we have the means to make it through a minor crisis like this one, which through no fault of their own is costing them at least $1,100. So I wanted to just highlight that, and also just say that three times, so elders of color are 3 times more likely to be living in poverty. In Ventura County, 8 out of 10 Latino seniors live below the elder index. So just to give you kind of a sense of that.
Can I stop you one
yes.
moment, Mr.
Please, of
Mays?
course.
Yeah, I just have a question. I'm not sure I understand the couple with a mortgage being $41,288. You're saying that's the cost of living with paying a mortgage?
Yes. So basically, the elder index, and you can go to, if you go back, I think the website, and it's also on Kevin's presentation, I think it was on your slide, actually, the website is there. But on the Insight Center's website, you can actually look at what it costs for seniors in your county, depending on whether or not they rent, they own their home outright, or they pay a mortgage, and depending on whether or not they're raising grandchildren, or if their adult children have moved back in with them. So there are different family formations, and the budget varies.
And I understand that it's different, but how many seniors in Ventura County own their home? Do you have a number? Do you have a percentage, or even statewide, how many people own their home? Because that'll make a difference, right, with that number.
Right, yes. And I don't have that percentage for you off the top of my head. I'm happy to look if you'd like for me to look for it for you. But if you actually go to the SC calculator online, you can see what the breakdown is for mortgages in any given county. Any other questions before I finish up? So just in closing, and you can go, yes, perfect. So the Insight Center and our over 200 allies in the Californians for SSI Coalition asked the Assembly to prioritize funding for SSI SSP in the 2015-2016 budget. Cuts to SSI SSP grants have pushed more than 1 million Californians below the poverty level, while pushing some even further into poverty. We ask that you raise grant levels to bring all SSI SSP recipients above the federal poverty level, and I was very happy that Assemblymember Thurman said, that this is actually a very low bar, and the idealist in me says we should bring it up to the standard of the SE. So we are asking that you raise grant levels to bring recipients above the federal poverty level and eventually above the U.S. Census Bureau's supplemental poverty measure, which, as Kevin stated, is still a very conservative measure of poverty. Provide a cost of living adjustment for the state SSP portion of the SSI SSP grant, and address hunger among SSI SSP recipients who are currently ineligible for federal food assistance in a way that does not harm or reduce the benefits of any recipient. Mr. and Madam Chair and committee members, thank you so much for your time and attention and for your service to California, especially to our seniors who are counting on you to strengthen our state's economy by reducing obstacles to economic stability.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Sandoval. Before you leave and before we lose our members, we're going to continue on, but before we lose our members, are there any questions, or would you like to end with anything? Okay, Mr. Mathis.
Slightly more of a statement. I think one of the biggest problems that we're facing, especially looking at all the data and whatnot, is that when these programs were originally created and originally designed, it was with the idea and the intent that people would have, buy their homes, and their homes would be paid off, and their vehicles would be paid off, and that, their cost of living would just be keeping the lights on and food on the table. And unfortunately, society has proved different, and our challenge is to, how do we fix that, how do we change directions, and how do we take care of our people? And so I look forward to catching up on everything else. I do have to leave shortly, but that is the challenge. Society didn't move the way the programs were originally designed, and our challenge as legislatures is to figure out how to change these programs to benefit everybody here in the audience and everybody back home. Thank you.
Mr. Thurman.
My question is really to either of the panelists about the connection between SSI and SSP and the food stamp program. And in our sub 1 hearing, it was stated that I guess it's a federal requirement that if you get SSI, SSP, you cannot receive food stamps, and that if you did, then you lose your SSI, SSP. I'm a both kind of person, right? And I want to make sure you have enough money to pay your rent and eat, and not have to choose one or the other. Right. I guess I'm asking, has any state approached this, has California or any state approached this to say we need change at the federal level? Has any state advocated for saying, if we're only going to potentially raise these benefits to poverty level standards, can we also have the food stamp benefits to complement that as well? What movement is there, if any?